So people have been asking me to do the 8 values test, and I'll leave a link to this in the description if you'd like to do it yourself. Let's start. So I'll be presented with a series of statements. For each one, click the button with your opinion on it. Got it. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. I don't think it's more of a concern. I do think it's a legitimate concern, but it's not more. It is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. Yeah, that's true. The freer the markets, the freer the people. I broadly agree, but I appreciate that, unfortunately, there are going to be times where the government has to intervene. It is better to maintain a balanced budget than to ensure welfare for all citizens. Okay, that's a big question. I don't think we are... I mean, no one's maintaining a balanced budget. And I don't want to see citizens go without welfare who need it, so I'm going to have to go disagree. Publicly funded research is more beneficial to the people than leaving it to the market. Oh my god, what a question. Christ, that's... Okay, that's a really good question. Because, I mean, the problem with leaving it to the market is you get research that is for a purpose. You don't get to research things that that don't have an end economic goal or interest. And so if there might be things that are completely necessary to research that that a corporation won't research because it's not profitable. However, if you make it publicly funded, you end up with gender studies and all this sort of nonsense. So honestly, I'm rather neutral on that. International trade is beneficial. Yes. From each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Get fucked. It would be best if social programs were abolished in favour of private charity. I disagree, but I do think that we should put more emphasis on private charity. I'm really annoyed, actually, at the distinct lack of private charity from the English and probably American middle classes. Taxes should be increased on the rich to provide for the poor. I don't like the term the rich. I don't think it's very useful. I think the term the wealthy would be more useful, because being rich is not the same as being wealthy. Being wealthy is what you will have if you stop working tomorrow. If you are still living the highest lifestyle possible, then you're wealthy. If you're not, then you're just rich. But anyway, neutral. Inheritance is a legitimate form of wealth. Well, it is, kind of. I mean, it's not illegitimate. The money was earned, it was taxed, and then it's inherited to a child after you die. Why is that not legitimate? Public utilities like roads and electricity should be publicly owned. I'm actually in favour of this, because I'm a disgusting statist. Excessive government intervention is a threat to the economy. Yes, it is. Those with a greater ability to pay should receive better healthcare. Okay, I don't like the way this question's phrased. Should receive better healthcare is prescriptive. Could receive better healthcare is not. So I disagree on the grounds they had should. Quality education is a right of all people. Well, I don't mind my positive rights. The means of production should belong to the workers who use them. Get fucked. And the thing is, I'm not even against people owning their own production, obviously. I'm very much in favour of entrepreneurship. But I'm sorry, if someone wants to employ you in their business where they own the means of production and you consent to be employed for a specific wage to work using their means that they have created themselves, no, you don't have a right to that. The United Nations should be abolished. The United Nations should be abolished. Big question or big statement. I don't like the fact that you had Saudi Arabia on the Women's Council or whatever it was, but I'm sure that in totality it's probably worth having than not. Honestly, I'm not an expert on the UN, so I'm going with gut here. Military action by a nation is often necessary to protect it. Yes. I support regional unions. No. It is important to maintain our national sovereignty. Yes. A world government would be beneficial to mankind. No, it wouldn't. It is more important to retain peaceful relations than to further our strength. That's an interesting question. It's a bit context dependent, to be honest. I'm going to disagree with that. Wars do not need to be justified to other countries. Actually, they do. That's the thing that prevents us from essentially just going to war out of greed and avarice. They do need to be justified. And there will be... I mean, even if you don't think you should answer to other countries, if there is some sort of rogue state that's randomly attacking all the countries around it, the countries around it will understand... They will all come to the conclusion that something needs to be done about this rogue state. So they do need to be justified, unfortunately. Military spending is a waste of money. What kind of idiot thinks that? International aid is a waste of money. No. My nation is great. Oh my goodness. I'm going to disagree. Not that I think my nation is not great, but I don't like this kind of better than you-isms. Research should be conducted on an international scale. Should, again, I don't like the use of the term should. Could be conducted on an international scale, absolutely. And I suppose it's probably better. You probably get access to more resources and a larger pool of skills if you do it on an international scale. So I'm going to agree, but it's, again, too prescriptive for my liking. Governments should be accountable to the international community. Well, yes, to a degree. And it's, again, not whether they should be, but they will be held accountable to the international community. And they always have been. Ever since the idea of the state arose, they have been accountable to one another. So, even when protesting an authoritarian government, violence is not acceptable. No, I disagree. If you're living under an authoritarian government, if you want to attack the agents of that government to liberate yourselves, that's fine. When you're not living under an authoritarian government, for example, if you live in a democracy, then it is unacceptable. But unfortunately, you've given me, even when processing an authoritarian government, and that's when it is acceptable. So, my religious values should be spread as much as possible. No, people shouldn't talk about religion. Our nation's values should be spread as much as possible. No, I agree with that. But that's only because my nation's values are universalist. If your nation's values are not universalist, then you can look at someone else's nation and say, okay, these people aren't going to appreciate my values. There we go. However, there are going to be people who don't like our values anyway, but get fucked, our culture's better. It's very important to maintain law and order. Yes, it is. The general populace makes poor decisions. Right. I don't agree with this, and I don't agree with this for a reason. People, they do tend to make poor decisions, but I find it very interesting, the idea of the wisdom of crowds. There have actually been studies done on this that show that people actually judge their own position in relative to other people. So if you're in a crowd, then you will keep an eye on what other people around you are doing and moderate your own response accordingly to make sure it's not extreme one way or another in general. There are obviously going to be exceptions to that. But no, I think generally the people who are making decisions in democracies, I guess we're talking about here, they tend to, they just operate in their own interests. If they need something, they'll advocate for that thing. And it's not their fault, and you can't expect any different. Of course they're going to. So, victimless crimes such as drug use should not be crimes at all. I agree. If there's no victim, what crime has been committed? Sacrifice of some civil liberties is necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. Unfortunately, this is true. I don't like it, but this is a legitimate truth. What else can you do? If you need to stop terrorism in your countries, you need to be able to see what the terrorists are doing, and unfortunately, that's going to violate their civil liberties. I don't like it, but unfortunately, it is the truth. Government surveillance is necessary in the modern world. It's an extension of the previous question. Well, yeah, I don't like it, and if I could find a way of legitimately rolling it back, then I absolutely would. But unfortunately, it is kind of necessary. If you want... I hate it. I really hate that. I have to agree with this. The very existence of the state is a threat to our liberty. No, the state guarantees our liberty. Regardless of political opinions, it is important to side with your country. Don't be an idiot. No authority should be left unquestioned. Oh yes. A hierarchical state is best. A hierarchical state is the only state you're ever going to have. I mean, at least even Marx understood that communism couldn't exist with a state because you would end up with a class system. It's important that the government follows the majority opinion, even if it's wrong. Well, that's an interesting question. I assume we're not talking about voting, and we're not talking about social norms and social policies. So I'm going to go no. The stronger the leadership, the better. No, not really. How to put it? It could be bad leadership that was particularly strong. But strength is important. This is the thing. Strength, it genuinely is important. Democracy is more than a decision-making process. Oh, absolutely. Environmental regulations are essential, yes. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. Well, I mean, it has so far. So given what we've experienced so far, yes, it does appear that science, technology, and automation will improve the world. So, but I mean, hell, who knows? We might end up creating the robot revolution, eradicating the human species. And that might actually end up for a better world for the robots. Children should be educated in religious or traditional values. Why did you put religious on there? Well, traditional values exist because they work. They are long-term, they're not particularly well thought about and criticised, but they do work and they do keep society functioning. And if you're going to live in the same society, you're probably going to need a continuation of those values. However, that leaves the door open to being dogmatic and holding them up as something that shouldn't be questioned, and I don't agree with that. So I'm going to say disagree. I think it's up to people to choose what to educate their children into. Traditions are of no value on their own. No, I disagree. Religion should play a role in government. Get fucked. Churches should be taxed in the same way other institutions should be taxed. Yeah. Climate change is currently one of the greatest threats to our way of life. I have no idea. And, oh my god, you should check out the comments on the Drunken Peasants video. Because it's a subject I just don't know anything about. I mean, I don't know the science, I don't even know what the consensus is. I don't know anything about it, because it's just not a subject that interests me. I've got other subjects that I'm working on. You would not believe how angry people are because it's just not something I know about, and it's not really something I'm interested in. I couldn't believe it. It's like, wow, I never knew that neutral was an offensive thing. Unless you're a culture warrior, and then neutral is an offensive thing. It's important that we work as a united world to combat climate change. Well, I mean, it is going to require an international effort, isn't it? I mean, I don't know anything about it, but let's assume that it is happening. It's not like one country can do it on their own. Society was better many years ago than it is now. Probably not. It's important that we maintain the traditions of our past. Well, I mean, yeah. There's nothing. Again, I don't want to come across being dogmatic on this, but yes, I think there is something to tradition and culture. I mean, this all part of an ethnicity, and I don't see why any ethnicity should need to go extinct. So yeah. It's important that we think in the long term beyond our lifespans. Well, yes. Reason is more important than maintaining our culture. Yes, I agree. If your culture is irrational for some reason, and that's not to say that like cultures are all rational or anything like that, but it could be detrimental to other people in your society. I don't think that. I mean, you might have a heavily conservative Islamic culture that regularly throws gays off of buildings. There's no real way to justify that using reason. So I agree that it's more important than simply maintaining your culture, your right to murder gay people. Drug use should be legalized or decriminalized. Strongly agree. Same-sex marriage should be legal. Strongly agree. No culture is superior to others. Strongly disagree. Sex outside marriage is immoral. Don't be dumb. If we accept migrants at all, it's important they assimilate into our culture. Strongly agree. Abortion should be prohibited in most or almost all cases. No. Gun ownership should be prohibited for those without a valid reason. No, I don't agree. I support single-payer universal healthcare. Yes. Prostitution should be illegal. No. Maintaining family values is essential. I do think it's essential for children, but I don't want it to be considered that I think family values are the traditional conservative values harking back to the 1950s. I think just a strong, stable family structure with loving parents is what children really need. And they don't have to necessarily be biological parents either, just as guiding figures, guiding adults who will be looking out for the children and who love the children and who the children can love in return. I think that is the important thing. To chase progress at all costs is dangerous, yes. Genetic modification is a force for good, even on humans. Whoa, Bob Chipman, what do you think? Strongly agree? No, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, it's a really, really big question, and I haven't thought it through properly. We should open our borders for immigration. No. Governments should be as concerned about foreign citizens as they are about those within their borders. No, that's no, literally no. No, I mean, like, by the definition of what a state is, the government has absolutely no concern or jurisdiction over foreign citizens. They shouldn't be concerned about them. All people, regardless of factors like cultural sexuality, should be treated equally. Oh, God, why do you phrase this in such an ambiguous way? By who? I mean, if it's by the law, yes, absolutely. If it's just by people in society, no, get fucked. You know, some cultures are hideous, and I will shame people who are part of hideous cultures. If you're running around screaming that women have to be in burqas and beating them for being whores, I'm not just going to stand there and go, well, I mean, you know, we should just we should respect his beliefs. So I'm going to go agree on the proviso you're talking about law. It's important that we further my group's goals above all others. Fuck your group rights. So here are my results. Economic axis, centrist. Diplomatic axis, balanced. Civil axis, moderate. Societal axis, progressive. Closest match, liberalism. Well, if a random test on the internet says I'm a liberal, that's good enough for me.